They call it the Aba Women's Riot of 1929. But here's the truth. The famous protest that shook the British Empire didn't begin in Aba, and the deadliest moment, they weren't in Aba either. For almost a century, textbooks, teachers, and even documentaries have repeated the same name, Aba Women's Riot. But what if the label is misleading? What if the story began in a much smaller town, far from Aba, and the fiercest battles happened in places most people have never heard of? It's not just about correcting a name, it's about restoring the truth of one of the greatest acts of resistance in Nigerian history. So, where did it truly begin? Why were women willing to risk their life, and how did a single widow ignite a movement that terrified the British Empire? Stay with me, because the story you think you know about is about to be rewritten. The year 1929, under British colonial rule, and southeastern Nigeria was divided into provinces. The protests broke out first in Oloko, a town in today's Abia State. From there, the movement spread rapidly throughout the Owerri province and across into Calabar province. Aba was part of this geography, but it was neither the starting point nor the site of the greatest bloodshed. The timeline runs from late November 1929 to January 1930. Within weeks, tens of thousands of women rose up, marching, singing, and challenging colonial courts and tax offices. British officers tried to contain it, but the protest spread like wildfire. Aba's name got attached later, yet the real story stretched across dozens of towns and villages. The spark that lit the entire movement came from a single confrontation in Oloko. It began with a widow named Wanyerua on November 18, 1929. She was approached by Mark Emeruwa, an agent of the warrant chief Okugo. His task was simple: to count people, livestock, and property. But for the women of that time, this so-called census means something terrifying. Taxation was coming their way. Wanyerua refused. She told him that as a widow, she should not be counted or taxed like men. The quarrel escalated. Voices rose and she stormed away, but she did not remain silent. She spread the news to the women of Oloko, and what began as a personal quarrel became a public call to action. In Igbo culture, women had a form of protest called sitting on a man. They gathered at a man's compound, singing, mocking, and drumming until he yielded. It was cultural protest, and now, for the first time, this weapon was turned against colonial power. Thousands of women answered her call, carrying palm fronds as symbol of unity. By late November, Chief Okugo's compound was surrounded. For the British, it was unthinkable. Women whom they dismissed as political irrelevant had just launched the fiercest challenge to their rule yet. The so-called Aba Women's Riot wasn't born in Aba, it was born in Oloko through the courage of one widow, Wanyerua. What happened in Oloko did not stay in Oloko. Market women, palm traders, and salt sellers carried the story along the roads of southeastern Nigeria. The spark became a chain reaction. By early December, tens of thousands of women were mobilizing. They gathered at native courts, factories, district offices. Their message: is to end unfair taxation, remove corrupt warrant chief, and respect traditional authority. This wasn't chaos, it was organization. Messages spread through palm leaves, coded songs, and even drum signals. Thousands could assemble in one town, vanish, then appear in another town the next day. Their tactics were sharp: blocking road, shutting down markets, mocking chiefs with satire, and sitting on abusive officials. These strategies embarrassed authority without losing unity. The British misunderstood them. To them, women chanting in thousands looked like disorder, so they called it riot. But to the women, it was war by solidarity. The protests spread fast, took control, and soon colonial response turned deadly. After bloodshed came on December 14, 1929 in Utu Etim Ekpo, hundreds of women surrounded the native court singing, demanding justice. Their goal was pressure, not destruction. But colonial guard panicked, fear rose, shots were fired. In the chaos, 18 women were killed and 19 more wounded. For the British, it was just crowd control. For the women, it was massacre. Mothers, widows, daughters gunned down for demanding fairness. Instead of breaking the movement, the Utu Etim Ekpo fueled it. News raised across villages. If the British would kill women for protesting, then this was no longer about tax alone. It was about dignity and survival. And worse was still to come. On December 16, 1929, just 2 days later, thousands gathered at Ikot Abasi, also called Iguana. They sang, carried palm fronds, and demanded justice. This time, the response was brutal. Soldiers aimed rifles at unarmed women. The order came, gunfire cut through the crowd. At least 31 women and 1 man were killed. Many more wounded. Some drowned as they fled into the river. It was the deadliest day of the Women's War. Entire villages mourned, yet even in grief, the women's courage became a symbol of ultimate resistance. The British thought bullets would silence them. Instead, Ikot Abasi carved the movement into history with blood. And here lies the contradiction. The most tragic, decisive battles didn't happen in Aba. They happened here. So why Aba? In January 1930, the colonial government launched the Aba Commission of Inquiry because it was based in Aba, and Aba was a major administrative hub. The British and the press used the city as shorthand. It was simpler than listing dozens of towns. That label stuck. It appeared in reports, in school books, in newspapers. Over time, it added into memory. But women never called it Aba Women's Riot. They called it the Women's War. The word Aba survived because of colonial convenience, not historical truth. The Women's War of 1929 was one of Nigeria's first great anti-colonial uprising, led not by soldiers but by women from Oloko to Ikot Abasi. They showed the strength of solidarity and the power of cultural protest against empire. The British were shaken. They abandoned plan to tax women and reduce the powers of the warrant chiefs. The uprising forced the government to admit women mattered in politics. Today we honor it by its real name, the Women's War. It restores dignity to those who sang, marched, suffered, and died for justice. Their legacy is alive. It teaches us that ordinary people, armed only with courage and unity, can resist injustice. And that's why the story must be told correctly. It wasn't just Aba, it was a regional movement of women who changed history. If you want more untold history revealed, like this video and subscribe for more.